was popping my pussy in these white boy frat houses.
Nah, but Akaash wants the dude.
The dude.
Yeah.
You think he can handle all 10 inches of nab? You think you can take nab down? As I'm sure you guys are aware, our boy Akaash, he really went through it earlier this year. He is going to be stepping away from the pod.
13 years of friendship, one of the biggest podcasts on the internet, and somehow the whole thing ended with a shrug emoji. And no, that's not some setup for a joke. That's basically how this messy situation played out. Akaash Singh walked away from Flagrant, but there was no big goodbye episode, no emotional farewell post, and not even a clear message directly from him to the audience that watched him help build the show. Instead, fans saw a caption that many took as passive-aggressive, an unfollow spree involving some very specific people, and posts from his wife that viewers quickly connected to the growing tension surrounding Andrew Schulz and one of his oldest friendships. These are two guys who built something huge together from the ground up, yet their public moves have made the split look anything but smooth. Social media activity, comments, and noticeable changes between the people involved have given fans plenty to dissect, although nobody outside their circle knows every detail of what happened behind closed doors. Still, this stopped looking like a basic podcast departure a long time ago. And the first major eyebrow-raising moment was the announcement itself. Andrew sat there without Akaash and told millions of listeners that his co-founder was leaving, while the man at the center of the announcement was nowhere near the studio.
As I'm sure you guys are aware, our boy Akaash, he really went through it earlier this year. He is going to be stepping away from the pod. It is bittersweet.
The phrase they used was that Akaash had been through it, which might be one of the most carefully diplomatic lines ever dropped into a podcast microphone. Because behind those three simple words was roughly half a year of brutal online attention aimed at his wife, with strangers picking apart her comments, posts, and public image, while Akaash mostly stayed quiet instead of jumping into the chaos publicly. And that silence became part of the story too. To understand why this situation hit so hard, you also have to understand what Flagrant meant for Akaash's career.
I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying go to the spank bank as often as you can.
He already had his own comedy grind, but the podcast gave him a massive platform far beyond the club circuit, putting his name and personality in front of millions of people who may never have discovered his stand-up otherwise. Flagrant helped take Akaash from a working comedian grinding through club spots and smaller rooms to somebody capable of performing on much bigger stages and selling serious tickets.
But Akaash wants the dude.
The dude.
Yeah. You think he can handle all 10 inches of nab? You think you can take nab down?
That massive rise is exactly why longtime viewers expected his exit to come with some kind of real goodbye. Instead, they got silence. He wasn't sitting there for the announcement episode, and afterward, there was no immediate public farewell in his own words, explaining what the show, the crew, or those years meant to him. That's what made the whole exit feel so strange to fans.
So funny. I went back to my high school and somebody was like, yo, I heard your voice with Akaash. I was like...
13 years of history, thousands of hours spent in rooms with the same people, endless arguments, jokes, road stories, and career-changing moments, and then suddenly, nothing. From the audience's point of view, it looked less like a proper send-off and more like Akaash simply disappeared from the picture.
What is up, Radio City Music Hall? Thank you guys so much for coming.
Leaving everyone online to fill in the blanks themselves. That's the version of the story the audience was left trying to make sense of. But since then, more awkward details have piled up, and one television appearance in particular took the tension to another level. The whole exchange was so painfully uncomfortable that fans immediately started dissecting every look, pause, and reaction like it belonged behind glass in a museum. We're definitely circling back to that television moment later, because somehow the longer you look at it, the more painfully awkward the whole thing gets. Every pause and reaction seems to give people something else to debate. But there's another character who jumps straight into the middle of this mess too, a certain podcaster who has practically appointed himself the unofficial, unpaid defense attorney for both sides, publicly weighing in like he's been handed the case personally, basically representing clients who never even hired him. And somehow, he keeps popping back up throughout this entire story, offering commentary nobody officially asked him for, and inserting himself into the drama at every turn. But before we get into all of that, let's focus on where Akaash actually stands right now, because he's coming straight out of what appears to have been one of the roughest stretches of his public life. And that's where things start getting even.
Your wife have a microphone in her face. Do not allow your wife to start a motherfucking podcast, bro.
More complicated. He sold out the venue he'd been talking about since the days when he was doing 5-minute sets for barely anybody. That's a genuine career high, the kind of night comedians can spend decades grinding toward. Whatever people think about the surrounding drama, No comment section can erase that achievement, and nobody should be trying to.
And I realized he actually doesn't follow Andrew anymore. But even worse, forget Andrew. Nigga, he ain't follow me no more. I'm telling you now, Akaash, I love you. I'm not going to unfollow you. And anything people ever said about you is because they love you. I know it might not seem that way, but we love you.
Then, almost immediately afterward, Akaash signed with United Talent Agency, one of the biggest agencies in the entertainment business. But the signing itself wasn't what had people talking. It was the caption. Akaash specifically wrote that he'd miss WME and that certain relationships are harder to walk away from than others. Subtle? Absolutely. But fans immediately started reading between the lines, with many interpreting it as a possible shot at Andrew and Flagrant, especially with a shrug emoji sitting right at the end.
I was popping my pussy in these white boy frat houses.
His money is our money, and my money is my.
He never named anybody, so that interpretation remains speculation, but the timing made people pay attention. Then the social media moves got even messier. Around that same period, Akaash's father appeared to unfollow Andrew while still following the other Flagrant hosts in the show's page. When fans notice family members seemingly choosing who stays on the follow list, you already know the internet is going to investigate every click. Akaash also unfollowed Charlamagne the God and DJ Academics.
You don't need a microphone in your face because you gonna fuck around and ruin us. All right, not just you.
Two figures who had supported him professionally in the past. And viewers quickly noticed one interesting connection. Both men had made comments about Jasleen that were less than flattering. Whether those comments directly caused the unfollows isn't publicly confirmed, but the pattern was enough to send people straight into detective mode. Strange coincidence. Or at least that's how it looked to people watching everything unfold. Academics noticed the unfollow himself and didn't just let it slide quietly. He brought it up on his own show, putting the situation right back into the spotlight and giving the internet another little detail to pick apart.
My brother, and we met in 2008. I remember I just moved to New York, and then I got asked to do this show. It was like a hood show. It was out in Brooklyn, Urban Room, they would call it. But the show didn't end up happening, got canceled, and then he drove me home together, and he drove me home in his mom's minivan. But then we started talking on the way home. He had all the same taste in comedy, and I didn't see him perform for months. And then I saw him months later at another hood show in Harlem, and he just destroyed the room. And I wasn't nearly I was bombing all the time at that point, but I knew I wanted to go in that direction. And then watching him just have this like unbelievable determination and loyalty. He's so loyal. I don't know a lot of people who get that successful and then they try to become better people while they're doing it. And I feel like he's done that.
Which is basically the internet version of realizing your name quietly disappeared from the wedding guest list. And from the outside, the pattern didn't exactly look hard to spot. People who publicly criticized his wife seemed to start disappearing from Akaash's following list, with no public conversation or explanation attached. That's a pretty serious shift when some of those people were established industry relationships. At the same time, whether every unfollow was actually caused by comments about Jasleen isn't publicly confirmed, and whether that criticism was fair is something viewers clearly disagree on. Still, the timing gave fans plenty to talk about. He's out here dropping connections like he's canceling subscriptions he forgot he was paying for, and from the outside, it can make it look like these guys suddenly became the villains of the story. But Charlamagne's actual point wasn't really a personal attack on Jasleen.
Deep dive on the Jasleen situation. Progress. Me and Jasleen, that's when we start chopping it up. She's obviously appreciative of our platform for just, being objective about her. I do the Jasleen pod. That shit go nuts, bro.
I've seen the
His criticism was aimed at the business side of the situation and the decisions being made around it. It was a blunt way to put it, but there was a real business point underneath what Charlamagne was saying. Flagrant's comment sections had become flooded with Akaash-related drama. New upload, new clip, new thumbnail, scroll down, and viewers kept dragging the conversation right back to the same controversy. Once one storyline starts hijacking the engagement and the podcast itself becomes secondary to the drama surrounding it, the person running the show has a legitimate commercial reason to address the problem before it completely takes over. And that's what makes this whole situation so rough to watch. Andrew and Akaash weren't random co-workers thrown together for content. Their history stretches back years, long before the current online noise, which makes the apparent breakdown between them feel much bigger than another messy podcast shakeup.
I got so much respect for her and Akaash because even my small taste of that, it's intense. Yo, y'all talking to me about people that I've met. I've had real conversations off of a camera.
Yeah.
Akaash sold out Radio City.
Yeah.
people on the internet are joking around as if he's lost something through all of this.
That's Akaash himself on tape describing Andrew as loyal and saying that the more successful Andrew became, the more he actively tried to become a better version of himself. Those aren't random words from some outsider. That's how Akaash publicly described a man he'd worked beside for years. And from what they've shared publicly over the years, Andrew didn't simply take off and leave everybody behind. As his career grew, he kept bringing longtime friends and collaborators into...
I'd be sitting around thinking like, yo, if I was just leaving, I would be doing it worse. Like, I would go on TikTok every day, just grab a rack and just count it in front of me like, oh, y'all mad? Y'all mad? Yo.
Bigger opportunities with him. That's what makes the current fallout hit differently. It stops feeling like some disposable internet gossip cycle and starts looking like the breakdown of a friendship with years of history, loyalty, and shared success behind it. And speaking of situations getting even messier, it's time to bring back the podcaster who somehow wedged himself right into the middle of all this. He'll openly admit on camera that covering this whole situation is basically a view machine for his channel, because every new twist gets people clicking. Then, almost in the very next breath, he'll turn around and assure everyone watching that he's approaching the drama with complete objectivity.
Andrew and Flagrant made a statement saying that Akaash is no longer a part of Flagrant podcast. And I had a problem with their statement.
As I'm sure you guys are aware, our boy Akaash, he really went through it earlier this year.
I'm sure that they're friends but I just don't like adding the context of he's been through a lot. Because I feel like you could have made that statement and just said, yo, he leaving the pod, he's focusing on stand-up, and that's it. That additional piece of context, like, how would you read that?
That's a pretty wild balancing act when you're openly acknowledging that the same controversy you're analyzing is also bringing serious attention to your content. Two statements that seem to clash, practically one sentence apart, and he delivers both without missing a beat. Then comes the advice: lean even harder into the exact behavior that's already generating all this backlash. At that point, critics could reasonably ask whether that's actually helpful advice or just pouring more chaos into a situation that's already messy enough. And here's the detail that makes his confidence even more interesting.
The funniest thing, because like I've met Akaash once, like I love Just Lead after meeting her, right? My neighbor goes, yeah, I heard your boy sold out Radio City. And then me and my girl were dying laughing. We're all like, no, it was so funny. I went back to my high school and somebody was like, yo, I heard your voice with Akaash. I was like, if this is how a down year,
yeah,
that's not how that feels. Like how that felt is that, yo, this was like the rough chapter in your hero journey. This is like LeBron losing a bunch of times and then finally getting that, yo, I got the ring.
By his own account, he's only been in the same room as Akaash one time. Yet he's speaking on the situation with the confidence of somebody who's been sitting front row for the entire friendship. One meeting, and he's out here defending the pair like they've been close for years and know each other's whole playbook. That's what makes his confidence in the situation so funny to watch. But he didn't stop at defending them either. He also had plenty to say about Andrew and the way the Flagrant announcement was handled, turning yet another part of the fallout into something for his audience to debate. To be fair, there is something to that criticism. Andrew could have kept the announcement clean and simple. His longtime friend and co-host was stepping away to focus full-time on stand-up. No extra details, no room for people to start reading between every line, and no need to feed an already overheated conversation. But there's another possibility sitting underneath all of this. From the outside, it looked like Akaash may have been exhausted by watching an audience he helped build suddenly turn him and his personal life into a constant punchline. And that's not hard to understand. Nobody wants to open the comments on a show they spent years building and see themselves becoming the story instead of the actual episode. Still, if Akaash wanted more control over how his exit was understood, he had a pretty straightforward option.
Well, so to all the people that didn't believe in me and didn't think I could provide anything, I just had my third call with an agency today. I think it's safe to say your girl is gonna start making money soon.
Rich.
The tables have turned, so what are you gonna do for me now that I'm making money?
Showing up for the announcement, recording a short goodbye, or even writing one clear paragraph in his own words could have answered a lot of questions immediately. Instead, the silence created a vacuum and the internet did what it always does. Filled that empty space with theories, screenshots, unfollows, and its own version of what supposedly happened. Choosing silence basically handed the pen straight to the internet, and the internet is rarely a generous storyteller. Once Akaash stopped explaining his side publicly, viewers were free to connect every unfollow, caption, and awkward moment however they wanted. And then there's the LeBron comparison that keeps getting thrown around, which might be one of the biggest stretches in this entire saga.
You're popping this butthole for the black friends.
You know, like, people always ask me, like, how are you so unaffected by, like, all these think pieces about you? Because it all sounds so fucking dumb to me. What my real issue is like, why do these people, when they talk about me, they get, like, 10x their normal views? But when I talk, and I'm talking, I don't.
LeBron James lost NBA Finals with millions of people watching, debating, and criticizing every move. Jasleen faced a wave of online criticism and Instagram commentary. Both can be unpleasant, obviously, but those are very different kinds of public pressure. Calling them the same level of adversity makes the comparison feel more dramatic than the facts really support. Meanwhile, Jasleen's own social media activity didn't exactly disappear. If anything, her public posting appeared to pick up around the same period she secured representation of her own, giving viewers even more posts, captions, and online moves to analyze while the controversy surrounding Akaash and Flagrant kept getting louder.
Yeah, should I do a think piece about ruining my husband's career after he sold out Radio City and, like, has never sold out more shows?
So there she is, publicly celebrating what she presents as a major win after just 3 phone calls, sitting right beside Akaash while his stand-up career is hitting new heights. At the same time, she's making it clear that the criticism supposedly isn't getting to her at all. That contrast is exactly what caught people's attention. A full-on victory lap energy playing out while the backlash is still raging in the background and viewers are analyzing practically every move they make. There's a pretty simple explanation some critics have offered for the numbers she keeps chasing. Not everybody watching is necessarily a fan. Some people may be tuning in because they're irritated, curious, or waiting to see what she'll say next. In other words,
my assistant Kiana helped us secure mangoes shipped from India.
high engagement doesn't automatically mean high approval, and the pushback hasn't only come from the Flagrant audience. A number of Indian women online have publicly criticized the way Jasleen talks about aspects of Indian culture, adding another layer to the controversy. That doesn't mean those voices represent every Indian woman, but it does show that the criticism is coming from more than one corner of the internet. On top of that, Jasleen has also joked publicly about the role she played in her husband's success, which naturally gave viewers another comment to dissect. So apparently, if you take the joke literally, the backlash is what sold out Radio City. Never mind Akaash spending years touring, staying in rough hotels, grinding through comedy clubs, and building an audience across 2 continents.
Where are my financially anxious girlies that also love to shop? Rise up. I'm here with you. Sometimes what I like to do to give myself like a little treat in between like big high-end shopping, I'm like, you know what, maybe I'll just buy a perfume. Yes, I know it's like consumerism and whatever. It's fine. I like it. Fashion is a hobby.
Reducing that entire climb to one wave of internet controversy skips over a massive amount of work that came before it. Then Jasleen took things another step further on Instagram stories, where she publicly indicated that Akaash and Andrew were no longer friends. That was a huge detail because it pushed the conversation beyond fans simply guessing about tension between them. And after landing representation of her own, her posts seemed noticeably more confident and celebratory. Some viewers read that as the agency deal going straight to her head, although that's ultimately an interpretation, not something anyone can know from Instagram posts alone. According to Jasleen's own posts, there's now somebody on Akaash's payroll whose assignment that day apparently included handling mangoes. Not scheduling, not emails, not some emergency piece of tour business. Imported mangoes. It's such a strangely specific detail that naturally people online grabbed onto it immediately. And the posts have kept coming with that same larger-than-life energy ever since.
So what are you looking forward to doing while you're here?
I love just walking the street. My wife likes shopping, so she really likes Honolulu and just all the shopping. And I will try to avoid spending money by distracting her with Waikiki Beach.
Everyday moments get presented like major events, which only gives critics and curious viewers more material to dissect while the bigger drama around Akaash continues unfolding. A treat in between the big treats. That's the kind of comment that's guaranteed to get people talking when your version of self-care appears to include designer shopping trips. Giving lifestyle advice to young women who may be watching every dollar can easily come across as wildly out of touch, and critics wasted no time pointing out that disconnect. Meanwhile, Akaash has been out doing press for his tour, trying to keep the spotlight on his stand-up career.
At the beginning of every show, I try to say, hey, if something I say like offended you, or you feel like I went too far, or if you just don't want to be talked to, just give me this motion and I'll move on. Because I'm 5'7" and I know this. I can't fight. So like, I don't need to be just mean to be mean. So like, I don't want to just like.
You don't want a Will Smith coming out.
Yeah. I'm a prime candidate to get slapped. I'm a very slappable guy.
But even when he walks into those interviews to talk comedy, the controversy seems to follow right behind him, waiting for somebody in the room to bring it up. The man has one job on that sofa: promote the tour, sell the dates, and keep the conversation on comedy. Instead, Akaash finds himself on regional television discussing his wife's spending habits with strangers who probably expected some light entertainment and the weather forecast. That's how far the controversy has traveled. The guy shows up to push stand-up tickets, and somehow his personal life still ends up stealing the interview. Then the interview suddenly went completely off-road when the host reached for a comparison that neither of them looked remotely prepared to deal with. Out of every possible reference point he could have pulled from, that's somehow the one he chose, leaving the whole exchange feeling even stranger than it already was. You could almost feel the awkwardness through the screen. And then, of course, came the interview everybody had been waiting for. The moment somebody finally stopped dancing around the obvious topic and asked Akaash about the situation directly. No vague hints, no carefully avoiding the elephant in the room. The controversy was finally sitting right there in front of him, and he had to respond. His answer was,
someone called her a gold digger or something.
Oh, it was a whole thing online. So
it was a big thing.
Yeah, there's this community of people online who don't really like women, and it's like their whole identity is women are awful. And look, I love a little bit of sexism, but like it was just obnoxious. He came on I had a podcast. He came on, and I just kind of dressed him down. He's like a 6-foot+ black dude who is getting dressed down on camera by this little scrawny, skinny, fat, never take his shirt off, wear 2 layers, 5'7" Indian. And I think he felt very embarrassed by that moment because it just lived. And every time he would try to come at me, I would just post that and be like, we've done our discussion. And then my wife is like me. She says crazy things. I don't care what she says. They're all jokes. I know it. And we don't get offended by jokes. So someone clipped up like all the craziest things she said back to back to back, and then just put it out on the internet, and then it just took on its.
Basically that the people criticizing Jasleen had an issue with women, and that the controversial clips being passed around online were jokes stripped of their original context through selective editing. That's a clean explanation, but it doesn't fully answer why some critics, including people who identified themselves as coming from the same cultural community, said they had separate concerns about her comments. Of course, that doesn't mean every criticism was fair or that every viral clip showed the full picture, but the backlash clearly wasn't coming from one single group. And that's where this situation gets painfully complicated. From the outside, viewers were watching Jasleen's public comments become a major part of the conversation around Akaash's career, while Akaash continued standing firmly beside his wife and defending her publicly. At the same time, his 13-year friendship and professional partnership with Andrew appeared to be falling apart in the background. Nobody outside that circle knows exactly what happened privately, but watching those two stories collide in public is what turned a podcast departure into something much bigger.